Welcome one and welcome all. It is Tuesday, March 26, 2024, 8:02 p.m. Central Standard Time on the dot. You know what that means. We are live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, the Blogging the Boys Twitch channel, and the Blogging the Boys Facebook page for this week's Blogging the Boys Roundtable. You can watch us live, obviously at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on any one of these platforms or at your own convenience if you happen to miss the live show. You can also listen to the show after the fact on the Blogging the Boys Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple devices, Spotify, etc., etc. If you subscribe to anything we offer, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube video, or you check out our site, bloggingtheboys.com, you see, hear, or read the works of myself. I'm RJ Ochoa. You know me, of course, from all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe. Like you know, all of the four gentlemen who are with me this evening. We will go in clockwise order for those who are here in a visual medium. That means we start with our 12 o'clock position. That is Anthony Catalina. Tony, how are you feeling tonight? Describe it with a food.
Oh, tapioca pudding.
I was actually going to say Jello. So you are oddly close. Very well done by you, I got to say. Coming out the gate strong. Chris Halling is here after requesting to join when the day was getting chaotic. That's what Chris does. When things are getting weird in Cowboys Nation, that's when he wants to be on the roundtable. So welcome, Chris Halling.
It gets me motivated to, jump in the discussion because, I'm a pretty vocal person and I like getting in, I don't want to say arguments, but, I like to be able to have conversation and, pick people's brains. So, yeah, I'm excited to be on here.
You won your last roundtable and you beat out Tony. You've talked a lot of trash. So I don't know which one of you is going to have the better score tonight. I'll go ahead and I'll predict Tony does. So we'll see how that goes. David Howman is here. Howman, just so you know, Watsamata said in the chat, look at all these handsome, unbearded men. You and Tony are sporting some facial fur. Do you feel targeted? Because Watsamata did not give you some shout outs in this sense.
Yeah, I feel targeted, but, I know that, me and Tony, we're rocking the beards and we don't really need, the extra support because the beards is all we need. So.
All right. So, I don't have a retort to that. Anything clever to say. Danny Phantom, who for the first time, at least that I'm aware of this offseason, issued a decree to which he will backtrack his support of the Dallas Cowboys front office. Danny, you have set a line in the sand as of today.
Absolutely, yes. Everyone knows where I stand with the Cowboys front office, but however, trust can be broken if a certain someone is not retained. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to just blindly, support these guys.
Before we leave the introductions, Danny, why don't you close us out with a food that you feel like tonight as well?
It's going to be something in the refrigerator because I'm chill. I feel really calm. So I don't know, just a nice, refreshing drink in the refrigerator. That's what I feel.
Do you have one tonight? Because you usually are prepared from a liquidation standpoint.
I'm doing some water tonight. It's just straight up water. So very plain, very Cowboys like. Nothing special.
Okay. On the subject of being very plain and very Cowboys like, Casey Hammond says in the chat, I feel like the front office is the kid who stays home on the night of the prom, Tony, and then gets mad that everyone is out there having fun. Haha. Teams that make moves succeed. Teams that stay idle fail to grow. So yeah, Tony, they're checking Snapchat, they're checking the IG. There's people on the dance floor hitting the Cupid shuffle. They're putting on the fun masks and they're in the photo booth and they're saying, I thought I was too good for this. I thought I was a wallflower, but I actually, high school, it's kind of cool. I want to be a part of the fun.
Yeah, and furthermore, I feel like the Cowboys front office is like that snitch from Recess who's just like no fun. It's just like, I don't know, it's just bad vibes.
All right, we never referenced Recess here. Shout out to is it TJ and the gang, I guess, Spinelli and
Spinelli,
yeah, I can't name anybody else that was a part of Recess. Okay, let's start with the most recent breaking thing because why wouldn't we? This was popping in our Slack chat. Chris Halling, the Dallas Morning News' Michael Gelkin reported or noted, however you want to put it, on Twitter and in the Dallas Morning News, obviously, that a reunion with Zeke Elliott or a union with Dalvin Cook is not out of the question for the Cowboys. Now, the Dalvin Cook of this all is kind of whatever, and I'll actually be full out cards on the table. We have a pre-write sitting in the crock pot at Blogging the Boys for Dalvin Cook signing with the team because a few weeks ago now, He had some breadcrumbs that he dropped on Twitter where he liked a couple of tweets and all sorts of stuff, whatever. But Chris, the big takeaway is Zeke Elliott. We all have joked, oh man, the Cowboys are totally going to bring Zeke back, whatever. But for Michael Gelkin, who I know we all respect greatly, he's a friend of Blogging the Boys, for him to say this means it is legitimately possible. So your thoughts, Chris, on the idea of Zeke Elliott returning to the Dallas Cowboys this season?
The concept doesn't surprise me at all, actually, but it doesn't mean I'm excited about it. I mean, you know, I think Zeke Elliott, I mean, he's obviously one of the best running backs to ever, you know, play for the Dallas Cowboys, but he's just not that player anymore. Last year for the Patriots, he carried the ball 184 times. His longest rush was just 17 yards. I mean, he doesn't really bring that explosion anymore. And yeah, I mean, it's just so weird because, you know, I was pretty outgoing about wanting the Cowboys to, you know, spend a little bit more money on the running back position and bring in someone of value. And, you know, they're already paying Zeke Elliott about $6 million in dead cap money. So if they sign him to, let's say, even like a $2 million deal, then it feels like they're paying him about as much as they would have if they had just, you know, signed a Pollard back or even brought in an Aaron Jones or DeAndre Swift or someone. It just, you know, it really feels like settling for the Cowboys. And, you know, it's not a shock to me at all. I mean, I know that it's really starting to get some substance to it with Gelkin, you know, I'm coming out and saying that, but I mean, I always figured that it could be a possibility this whole time.
David Howman, Danny catches grief for being the chill one of the group, but you're pretty chill, actually. You're maybe not as cold, maybe not the cucumber.
He's growing up.
Yeah, maybe not a cucumber in the crisper, but, you know, you're like a soda that's maybe getting flat, you know, because we cracked it open and put it back in. So that being said, Kevin says, why is the Zeke media report worth talking about? Until it happens, this is just last year 2.0. Do you agree with that, Howman? Or do you agree that the fact that Michael Gelkin, of all people, reported this does mean there's a little bit more wind behind the sails of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that Michael Gelkin puts something out there, whether it's a report like this or even, you know, back shortly after the offseason began, he had written an article about how the Cowboys, you know, he anticipated the Cowboys were going to take a more modern approach to the running back position, looking to draft somebody and have, you know, really cheap free agents. And that's, you know, exactly the approach that it sounds like they're taking at this point. So anytime that he says something, I'm going to listen. So him putting Ezekiel Elliott's name out there, that perks my ears up. But for a different way than it does for Chris, because I think this would be a smart move at this point. You know, Zeke is not going to be making the kind of money that he was when the Cowboys moved on from him, because Zeke is not the guy that he was when he got paid for that deal. And that's why the Cowboys moved on from him. That's why he didn't have, you know, the biggest role out there. He didn't have the biggest market out there after the Cowboys got rid of him. And, you know, the explosive numbers aren't there, but he wasn't really used in that manner in New England. He was a short yardage kind of back. And he did fairly well in that role when they needed those short yardage rushing plays. When they got down to the goal line, he was still able to, you know, be that downhill runner. So if that's the kind of guy that they're looking for at this point, you know, with this market, I think Zeke is going to be, you know, fall right into their price range and fit the exact kind of role that they're looking for. And I don't think it's going to take him out of the market for drafting a running back that can be your explosive playmaker.
Danny Phantom, do you think this was the plan all along? And do you think if it was, that there was a semblance of, we're going to make sure the market calms down to where we can justify bringing Zeke back? Because at this point, it is hard to argue anybody else over him just because of who's out there.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the plan all along. I mean, honestly, with Elliott, and, you know, Chris touched on it already. I can't remember what his yards per carry was, but it wasn't good. I think it was even worse this year than last year with Dallas. I'm not interested in him. I mean, he's not the worst person to have on the bottom of your running back group. I'm okay with that, but honestly, I'd rather give carries to Rico, or, you know, there's other RB2s that I would rather have the ball in their hands. So I don't know. The thing that bothers me about this is if he does come back, it's not going to be a big deal, really, and it's going to be cheap, but I just don't want the flack to have to deal with. Like, the Cowboys don't know what they're doing. Here's Zeke. They have to get Zeke back. You know, like it was a mistake to let him go in the first place or something. I just don't want to deal with any nonsense. The Cowboys, they need a rookie running back. There's still running backs out there, and the Cowboys will do their shopping when they deem necessary. So there's still choices to choose from, and people that I would actually prefer over Elliott. So I don't know. I really am indifferent. Don't really care either way, but I kind of prefer not to go back that route.
Tony Catalina, you very famously have a dog named Zeke. You are emotionally and I guess in that sense financially invested. So do you want to see this? You aren't, as mad at the front office as everybody else is. I think if for the people who are like a 10 out of 10, you're maybe an 8 out of 10. Does this push you closer to 10? Are you indifferent towards the idea? Do you agree with Danny that it would be annoying how big of a story this would be and that in and of itself might make it not worth it?
I would say my annoyance factor isn't really has anything to do with Ezekiel Elliott, but it's more so indicative of kind of the frustration I've had with the plan all along. Like Danny said it best, like Rico Dow can do the things that Zeke can do. There are other options that Zeke can do, but this front office gets stuck in like their comforts. So the fact that Ezekiel Elliott could come back in the fold to be a running back too, and it almost be like a feel good story is not how I want to run and operate a business, right? Like I just if you think he can really bring something, he can help the football team. Of course, I'm going to sit here and say let's make it happen, but I think most people would probably agree that like there probably are better options. And like, it would be cool. It's a fun story. I mean, I found myself rationalizing over the last couple of weeks with how everything has unfolded, where like I'm less concerned about the wins and more about the vibes, right? So Zeke might bring good vibes to the team, but I don't know if he's going to bring you good wins. So like, I just on a purely schematic basis, I don't love the idea, but like I haven't loved many of the decisions they've made thus far. So it's one of the same.
I think the best answer from this entire sort of round table turn came from Danny Phantom. Although I don't know that you're going to agree with my assessment of your answer, Danny. I think we all have our worst thoughts of the Cowboys, and a lot of them are really intense, probably way too emotional. But I do think to a degree, if the Cowboys were to bring Zeke back, it would justify some of those. It would justify that they do not care about the circus, that they in fact are inviting of the circus, that they want the circus. They want that to be a part of it because you cannot tell us that it's worth it for what an RB2 would offer you on the field. You simply want the circus in some way, shape, or form. It's a high scoring night here on the roundtable. So Danny, you're out to an early lead with 120 points. Tony, I saw that jaw drop. Wow. Are you impressed with the point tally so far?
Yeah, I didn't expect to see that.
Chris, you're the only person not in the triple digit club. You're at 99. Howman's at 108. Tony's at 104. Do you feel slighted?
Are we going to go backwards? Are we scoring backwards this time?
I'm sure that.
Come on, RJ, you can do it. Come on, you can do it.
I'm sure that it's just going to get worse from here on out. So.
Wow. So look, hey, it's a long game, but you're the last one to 100. Chris, you could still win. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those.
Wins the race.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's a marathon, not a sprint. Yep. But Danny, you are out to a lead in the sprint. Okay, so our next topic is probably our beefiest one of the night. It was very weird. So we got a report on Tuesday from NFL Network. In fact, let's put the report on the screen. So here we go. This is at blogontheboys.com. You can read our article. I happen to write this, so I'm a little bit biased. So the visual audience can certainly check this out. Ian Rappaport first tweeted Howman, the Cowboys and Dak Prescott have a mutual understanding of his contract situation, sources say, with no offers from Dallas despite him being in a contract year. Owner Jerry Jones said, we are where we are, locked and loaded for this year. No indication a deal is coming. Howman, again, I didn't find this to be that panic-worthy until Ian added his quote tweet where he said, this appears to clear the path for Dak Prescott to test free agency in 2025. Are you panicked, Howman? Are you worried? Are you concerned? Do you find this to be a bunch of nothing? Because those opinions were all over the place on Tuesday as well.
I'm not really panicking at this point, mostly just because the original tweet from Ian Rappaport, without kind of the I don't want to say editorialization because that seems a little slanted, but kind of some of the more commentary part of it about potentially testing free agency. But the original tweet it seemed like it didn't really have any real information coming out. Like, yeah, they both understand where they're at in the contract negotiation. I would hope so. Nothing's happened yet, and they both understand that nothing's happened yet. A month ago, Dak Prescott was saying like, "Oh yeah, it's like we're gonna get it done." Nothing from him sounded like there was any level of hedging bets or like. We don't know. We got to talk about it. We got to see where things are. And that's what you would expect to hear from a guy who has all of the leverage in these contract negotiations, whereas the Cowboys are finding themselves with no real leverage And also now thinking about, well, if we're not going to go ahead and give him this extension and do it on his terms, then we have to pretty much do a hard reset of the entire organization, which they've certainly, with what they've done with the coaching contracts and some of the inactivity in free agency, seems like they've set themselves up to be able to do that. But I don't think they actually want to jump off that ledge and do a hard reset. So I really think this is mostly just the front office, doing what they always do this time of year, posturing and trying to gain some leverage back in these negotiations when they have no leverage. And as we've seen from how Stephen Jones tends to handle these contract negotiations, and just as he did with Dak Prescott the first couple of times around when he was negotiating, I don't think it's going to help him. I don't think he's going to gain any leverage. And I think in the long run, when they finally do come to terms with an extension and they do actually pay Dak Prescott again, they're going to pay more than what they would have if they had just taken care of this when they should have in the very beginning.
Tony, it did seem a little bit like negotiating through the media, which the Cowboys, for whatever reason, still believe to be an effective tactic. There were, I think, 3 sort of groups of takeaways here. There were the good, I'm glad Dak doesn't belong anywhere near this team. He sucks. He's a scrub. Then there was the this team is stupid if they let Dak walk. Then there was Howman, who's a little bit more like, I'm really not moved by this one way or the other. You fall in that camp yourself. You feel like this is a real non-story, kind of a just Ian talking and not really saying anything sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I would love to say, I would love to give Jerry the credit that this feels like negotiating through the media, but I feel like it's more petty than that. I feel like it's literally hot air worth nothing that he's just getting himself some more airtime over. Ian Rappaport and NFL Network put out the whole breaking news to break no news whatsoever. It was, the whole graphic made no sense. You read it, you break it down, and it's they have an understanding. This sets the path. Well, yeah, this is all things that we've known. But if you look back at the conversations, Dak, calmly says, I expect a contract. Stephen Jones says he's the future. Jerry Jones is going to give you some roundabout answer that tells you they support the quarterback. And to me, I don't know. I really don't even know why it came out, because like I said, I didn't learn anything new. It really was perplexing. So yeah, I sit right in the middle but it's funny to see the fan base, because like you said, a lot of people expose their hand on how they felt. One people read it oh, he's gone, see you later. And the other ones, I can't believe they'll do this. This is the final straw. And it's well, if you just read it, you're probably not getting either of those.
Danny, I mentioned, and so I guess now it's time to fully pull the curtain back, that you tweeted earlier today about something that would be kind of a final straw, something that would cause you to, in your words, resign. And good job using resign properly. Where it's the time of year people get resign, resign mixed up all the time. So proud of you, Danny. That's the writer in you. But that you would resign as the president of the fan club of the front office. Is that correct? I want to get your title. Obviously,
yes,
right.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I got the card in my wallet if you want to see it.
I don't need you to pull the Velcro open and hear that weird noise in the microphone. But anyway, you would resign from that post if the Cowboys botch this and let Dak Prescott walk. You highlighted and cited properly that Dak finished second in MVP voting this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's asinine to even think that this could even happen. I think for the YouTube audience, the most shocking thing about what you just posted there was the fact that you can get 20 McNuggets for less than $10. That was more revealing
on the ad. Okay.
Because this is nothing. This is not. I don't even think that. I don't even want to even talk about it. To me, I feel like it would just be a gross mismanagement to let a franchise quarterback like Prescott go.
Well,
I know.
Hang on, Danny, to interrupt you. Mike Flavin says in the chat, "What's different between Dak and Quincy Carter? They both watch the playoffs from their couch. So don't you feel stupid, Danny?"
Well, after that comment, I have to rethink some things, I suppose. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of differences between the two. We don't have time to go over all of them, but I think there's a lot of people that underappreciate Dak Prescott, and I know that he still needs to show us some things, particularly in the postseason. That's no denying that. And this is kind of how I feel with the front office too. It's you got to look at what's not working for the Cowboys, and you just can't just throw something out because the whole thing's not working. You have to look at each individual thing. And to me, Dak Prescott, he's working. I'm not getting rid of him. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. The Cowboys would be stupid to do. And if they have plans, and I don't deal in absolute, so I'm not betting my house that
Or a
he's going
Sith.
to be. Yeah, right, exactly. It could happen, but I think it's largely unlikely. And if it did happen, without question, I have my faith in this front office takes a huge dive, because that's just terrible. You don't do that. And Jerry Jones knows it. He's been around for the Quincy Carter era. He's not going to go that route again. I don't think this is even an issue. I think the Dak's going to be resigned before the end of September. So to me, it's just a whole lot of nothing.
Interesting. It is a thing, as Tony touched on, that kind of shows everybody's hands. So Howman, Tony are kind of like, I didn't really find this to be a big deal. I not that you did, Danny, but you at least were vocal about, hey, if they mess this up, I'm out, blah, blah, blah. Chris Halling, you are on the other end of that spectrum.
I don't necessarily think the report itself is like a lock for anything, but I also think that if the Cowboys, to me, if they were going to extend Dak Prescott, they should have done it before free agency. Doing it now doesn't make any sense, in my opinion. You might as well wait and see what happens this season and feel more comfortable about that decision after what we see this season. And, I know that there's theories about, what the Cowboys are doing, what their, whole roster building is, and if they're setting up Dak for failure or like all these different things. I'm not going to get into all of that. But, I mean, to me, Dak hasn't proven that he can take this team far in the playoffs. And why are we going to just throw $60 million a year at him and continue that problem without, seeing what he can do this year as well? And I understand that this is going to be the toughest challenge that he's faced in a long time, in my opinion, because he's losing a lot of holes. He's not going to have his left tackle that he's been used to having. He's losing, a good running back, and he's losing all these different players. So it's going to be a challenge for him. But I think this is when he really proves, does he deserve that payday? And I think if he can take this team deep in the playoffs, then I think the Cowboys should feel more confident about giving him that kind of a contract, as opposed to if this is a losing season or if they don't make the playoffs, then I think that the Cowboys should feel comfortable moving on from him.
I think anyone who is fine moving on from Dak is out of their mind. And sorry, Chris.
Yeah, it's okay.
That includes you.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I'm starting to feel like, and so I'm team keep Dak. I'm team pay Dak. I'm team give Dak market rate money. Like, I don't know if that's obvious enough. So, and I understand that you are team. Let's move on, Chris.
I was team. I don't want to say I was team move on from Dak. I'm just team make the right decision when it comes to Dak's future. It doesn't make sense to do it now. Like if Dak has a great year, then reevaluate. And
it makes sense to do it because you still get to keep him. That's the big pro is Dak Prescott gets to be your quarterback. You don't get the salary cap space, but they wouldn't have used it anyway. I mean, again, I have, it's annoying to resign that, but it's the truth. So the plus to doing it, I'm just saying it's not a net negative to do the extension now or in September, like Danny said. You still get Dak Prescott services. Tony, you raised your hand very politely.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said is why they haven't done it. Like, they're not going to use the money anyway. So what's the rush, right? Like,
yeah.
To Gelkin's point, we just talked about his credibility and what he says we listen to. In the same vein, he was the first one to tell us, like, this could happen in August. This could happen before week 1. So that timeline is still accurate. So all the rest of this is fodder if we're really looking and boiling it down to say, okay, we trust this guy. He's been right on a lot of things. I'm not going to overreact to something that we kind of already knew.
So along all these lines, what I was getting at, and thank you, Tony, that's a great point. What I'm starting to worry about more than anything is that the Cowboys are playing with too hot of a fire, and they are going to ruin this because they stretched it out, because they procrastinated, because they prolonged it, whatever the case may be. I agree with Brian in his super chat. I was waiting to get here, Brian. Appreciate it. Everybody follow him on TikTok at Talk Cowboys. Says, from a business standpoint, Dak is a fool to sign anything before he's a free agent. He will get paid. The Cowboys will get a third-round compensatory pick, and we will be back to the aforementioned 2001 Quincy Carter years of rebuild. Again, Danny, really stupid of you to think that Dak is anything better than Quincy, because they both watched the Chiefs win the Super Bowl from their couch. So, haha, in your face. Howman, that being said, I mean, Dak is less than a year away from true open market free agency in what would be an unprecedented manner relative to modern NFL history, certainly since the dawn of the 2011 CBA. Yes, we saw Peyton Manning get there. He had the neck issue. We saw Kirk Cousins get there this year, and the time before didn't really have the credibility that he does now. Now he has the Achilles issue. Like, if Dak, God willing, is fully and totally healthy next year, there would be no real precedent for that situation in terms of open market free agency. It would be incredibly unlikely the Cowboys would outbid what the open market would ultimately demand for Dak. And so then they would risk losing Dak for absolutely nothing.
Part of me kind of wants to see that happen, just for one, to see all these fans of other teams that have spent so long saying Dak Prescott isn't that guy. He's basically the next Quincy Carter. All of a sudden they're turning around and saying, God, I hope my team signs Dak Prescott. I take back everything that I've ever said, because it would be a fun about face for all of them to be doing.
Oh, hold up, Howman. AJ says, let some bonehead GM offer, and then he put a trash can emoji, caught. So like trash caught. Holy crap, Howman, you got to leave, dude. You have been owned, man. I'm sorry. Like, wow.
Well, I have no further points. So. But no, I think on one hand that would be exactly what you would see, kind of like how Eagles fans now are saying Kellen Moore's a genius, even though not too long ago they were saying, oh, this guy can't coach his way out of a paper bag. But also, if Dak Prescott does go to another team, it'll be very depressing, because he will go to a team that manages their roster in the proper way, and suddenly the rest of the world will get to see the guy that some of us, not Chris, but some of us know that he is, and he's going to be way more successful. And then the Cowboys are going to be, basically hitting a hard reset on their team. And I think, first of all, I don't think that's what they're actually entertaining the option of doing a hard reset and letting Dak move on and evaluating where they're at with all these other players. I think that's really a negotiating tactic. But if they were to go that route, I think if that's what they have decided that they're going to commit to and they're going to do that, I think that probably means that Stephen Jones has kind of looked back and done some introspection on how he handled things when Dak was on his rookie contract. And as we've all, criticized much to this point, like, they had him for dirt cheap for 4 years and they did nothing to build the team around him, as far as, going out and, being actually all in and going out and being aggressive in free agency and getting players to build around him. And I'm wondering if they're looking at that now and saying, man, we really missed the boat on that. And they're seeing a bunch of other teams taking that approach now and generally being successful with it, and saying, well, if we're no longer sold on Dak and we found ourselves in a situation where we're going to make a change at coach, we could make a change at quarterback, we could, overhaul the roster. Let's go ahead and do that and find that next quarterback, and then just go all in building around that young quarterback while he's on a relatively cheap controlled contract. So I think if they do go that route, that's the way that they would go about it. But I also don't think that that's the situation that they'll find themselves in. I think, when Michael Gehlken had said this could happen in August, to me, that seems like the appropriate time for it to happen at this point, that they're going to get it done before the season starts so that they don't get themselves in that bidding war that they have, zero capability of winning. And I think that, it'll all work out in the end.
Chris, you have raised your hand like 14 times.
I just don't understand this narrative that Dak Prescott could go to a different team and be more successful. Because what roster is going to have as many all pros that will just add Dak Prescott on that team, and Dak will take them deeper into the playoffs? It doesn't make sense.
Chris, to stop you and pause you right away. Actually, another peek behind the curtain and let me pull it up to be 100% accurate here. Before we started chatting, before we jumped on the roundtable, you asked us in the Slack channel, how many, what did you say earlier today? How many will this team win over under 8.5 games? Over under 8.5 wins next season was your exact question.
Yeah.
But the roster is so loaded around Dak.
It's not right now because
who is the all pro that they lost? Who was the all pro that they lost? They've lost a lot of players. Okay, fine. I'll give you Tyron Smith. Who is the like mass exodus of all pro talent to where now you're setting the over under 8.5 that Dak has to work with?
Well, it's not just the all pros that they've lost.
Oh, and now
they've lost a lot of depth. They don't have a run game. They don't.
Brandon
have
Aubrey be missing field goals left and right with these things all over the place.
My thing is this: like, Dak hasn't succeeded up to this point, and he's had great rosters around him the past 4 years now. And
By
he
that
still
metric,
can't get over the
Tyron
hump.
Smith hasn't succeeded. So why are you bummed about him leaving?
Okay, but that's so different. It's a quarterback.
Oh, I mean,
You're
hey,
comparing a
he's
quarterback
supposed to be
towards an
that great. He
offensive
got
lineman.
hurt.
That's not the same. That's not the same argument.
I actually agree with Chris here. I mean, I don't think. First off, if he did hit the open market, Dak, Trash Scott would become the highest paid quarterback in the history of the NFL. He's the highest paid player. Because I mean, teams are resetting their quarterbacks quickly. Your first round picks don't even make it. Year 2, they're gone. We saw what happened with all the trades. So somebody would pay a huge amount of money for him. He's probably going to go to a team that's not very good, and I don't think I think he'll probably he'll struggle. Prescott he hasn't shown himself to be like the Mahomes type playmaking ability. He does need help. He needs people that can run routes. He needs protection. I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say that he could go somewhere else and not be as successful. I think he is surrounded by talent. I think the Cowboys have talent. So this is the perfect spot for him. But one more thing I wanted to say too. Brian made a comment. I want to about the Dak would be foolish to not test the free agency market. Keep in mind that Todd France and Team Dak, they know this. So they're trying to push the highest end of this deal right now. So if people are wondering how come it hasn't happened, remember there's the other side to this, trying to get the most money here. So I just think there's a lot of factors here. Prescott's a really good quarterback. He's in a really good situation. He should stay in the situation, and the Cowboys will make him the highest paid player ever.
Is the really good situation not one that involves a really good offensive play caller? Or is Mike McCarthy not so bad that Dak Prescott's in a horrible situation because of him?
No, Mike McCarthy's not so bad that he's in a horrible situation. The Cowboys their offense is fine. McCarthy and Schottenheimer did a good job.
And Schottenheimer, wow. Poor Mike can't get some love.
Okay, well, McCarthy
and Jeff Glasgow.
Yeah, I actually, the more this drama that's going on, the more I'm actually just like pulling for McCarthy, and I'm liking McCarthy. Well, I think he's handling himself really well. So I don't want to be hating on McCarthy.
We'll get there in a little bit. I'm just here to point out the inconsistencies in some of your games. That's why I did it with Chris. That's why I did it with you. And your long-term games in terms of previous roundtables as well. But Chris, you were still in the middle of your diatribe, even though you think this team sucks, about how Dak Prescott is in this incredible situation that he wouldn't be anywhere else.
I'm not talking about the incredible situation this year. I'm talking about the incredible situation that he's failed to succeed in the past several years. He will not find a better team anywhere else than this past team. He's not going to find any team better than the 2021 team or the 2019 team or even the 2018 team. There's just not going to be any roster like that anywhere else around the league that will take him right now for that $60 million a year contract, because those teams can't afford it. So then why not?
If it couldn't get better than 2018 and it literally got better in 2019, and it couldn't get better than 2019 and it literally got better in 2021, and it couldn't get better than 2021, but it literally got better in 2023.
The roster got better, and
isn't it not possible that could happen to any other team in the NFL? Or just the genius Cowboys front office that we all agree is messing up right now?
They didn't win anything in the playoffs.
I mean, that's not – look –
How is that not him?
Danny had this point a little while ago, and I want to shout out Landon McCool, old school BTBer, who had a Twitter thread earlier today. We can be mad at the front office, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we're mad at a bunch of the players on the team too, Dak himself included. Tony, you're the only person that hasn't chimed in here, but before you do, I want to get Brian's second super chat up on the screen. It says Dak will make bank in free agency. I have no doubt. There are teams that will take him. Cowboys should have looked to trade him with his permission and gotten picks for the rebuild. Now we get a third. That's the hypothetical compensatory pick. But I do want to put this Tony's tweet on the screen to set you up. Robert Mays of The Athletic said earlier today that he said it on today's show, The Athletic NFL show, obviously. If they were going to do this, the best purely football move would have been to work with him on a trade this spring. Instead, they might watch him walk for next to nothing a year after accounting for $55 million against the cap. Tony, you are very much team don't let Dak go. But if you're going to do that, if you are resigned to letting him walk in 2025, you should have done everything possible to trade him now.
Yeah, the best possible scenario in this is already kind of came and went, right? If you didn't like him, you don't want him anymore, trade him, get capital. If you don't and you let this ride out, you're going to lose him for nothing. You're gonna get compensatory pick, and we know they love those, but it's ultimately not as good as what you would have gotten for a trade. So ultimately, where I stand is where I've always stand. They're gonna get the contract done. It's posturing, it's peacocking, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, like, I know people are frustrated. I'm there, right? Like, I've never been more frustrated in the offseason since I've been a fan. But at the same time, I think I hate to get elementary with people, but like 31 quarterbacks don't get it done every single year. Like, every quarterback who's never got it done is always came up short. So like, when you have a top 10 solidified quarterback, without question, I put him in the 5 to 7 range. Anybody I talk to, you're going to throw that away for what? Michael Penix? Like, I'm not playing this game. Like, this is nonsensical. You know what I mean? I'm not even trying to say like Chris, because I know you said that, but it's like, I think we're talking about Dak Prescott's the problem, right? And that's an oversimplification. Dak Prescott is the Cowboys' reasoning for not winning playoffs games. He's the reason they haven't won in 28 years, you guys, if you didn't know that. So with the oversimplification, I can oversimplify it and say, you know, quarterbacks don't just grow on trees too, right? So if we're going to talk about, you know, one side of it, let's go on the other side of it. So we get rid of Dak Prescott, then what? Then we're laughing, but it's more like crying inside, because we do have the Chad Hutchinson days, the Brandon Weeden days, all these Andy Dalton days. Like, those are the things that are coming down the pipeline, where instead we can just understand that not everyone is Patrick Mahomes, right? Not everyone is going to be able to just be Superman, but understand that there's a huge difference between settling for garbage and then Patrick Mahomes. Like, what do we like? Yeah, if you think we're an 8.5 win team, that's good for what, the 14th pick, 15th pick. What are you getting with it? Then you got to move up, and then you're the Minnesota Vikings, you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're your ass. Like, it's just tough. You know, it's not a good situation. Dak Prescott doesn't get the respect he deserves. I'm not even trying to, you know, be this guy's hype man, but like the rhetoric is ridiculous. It's absolutely, it's off the rails since the playoff loss.
The only thing I would add to this, because I mostly agree with Tony, although you got a little bit too vulgar for my taste, at least before 9 o'clock. But if you are somebody, and I don't mean you specifically, Chris, but if you're somebody who thinks that, because a lot of people think the Cowboys think he sucks, right? A lot of people think that the Cowboys are like, oh, they must think he sucks. That's why they traded for Trey Lance. That's why this, that's why that, whatever. Okay. Dak Prescott literally shattered his ankle, right? Like we all saw, like it was this incredibly gruesome injury. And literally in the aftermath of that, they made him the highest paid player in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. Think about that. That is how terrifying the alternative is. Forget Michael Penix. If you're watching, Michael, I'm a fan. Tony's the only person bagging on you right now. But they are so rightfully terrified, Chris, of the alternative that they gave this man with a completely incinerated ankle, the richest contract that anyone in team history had ever gotten.
And he won one playoff game after that.
It's
this isn't golf. This isn't tennis, brother. There's other players involved. Like, there's other players. This isn't pickleball
per se, as it is a philosophy. Like we're going to keep having to pay this big time money at a quarterback who's not a Patrick Mahomes, who's not one of those types of players, because really there is only one Patrick Mahomes, and that's perfectly fair.
It's not big time. It's the same time. It's the same time contract that he got last time. The numbers are just bigger all the way around. It's the same from a percentage.
I understand that, but then a few years down the line, we're going to have the same issue, and we're going to have cap.
It's going to be the same percentage. Like, it's the same. If you were fine with it then, you should be fine with it now.
Well, I mean, I was fine with it because I thought that he would maybe, like take a step up in the playoffs, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, again, we're just, we're seeing the same thing over and over again. I don't understand how many, attempts he's going to have with a great roster. And
how did Michael Penix do in the playoffs, by the way?
Michael Penix is one of the most accurate passers in this draft class, and he's going to be really good at the next level. And
how did he step up in the playoffs?
I'm not even a Michael Penix fan. I don't care about Washington, but he's a really accurate quarterback. And if he falls in the second round to the Cowboys, it would be wise for the Cowboys.
Not the first round though. He's a loser in the first round, but in the second round, if he falls,
in the second round, it makes sense.
Yeah, in the second round without the fifth-year option. Do you see the lack of foresight that you have here, Chris? Danny, you've been quiet and watched us bicker and argue. Do you have any thoughts?
I just think that one thing I wish Chris would understand, and a lot of people would understand, it is just really hard to get a good quarterback. And we've seen teams just keep going back to the well. I mean, look at the Bears. It's like Mitchell Trubisky, Justin Fields. They're going to try again. this year. And I mean, there's so much you have to invest, a lot of draft capital, which, by the way, that's the Cowboys' bread and butter. You take some of that away, then they can't do what the good stuff, what they do with building the roster, because they have to be one of those teams that spend it on a quarterback. And then if you don't hit, you got to do it again. And all along, you're sucking. You're just not a good team, because without a quarterback, you struggle. So it's just such a very daring thing to do. And I don't know why anybody would want to do that. You know, how many chances should Dak get, Chris? As many as he wants, because the Cowboys get there, they have a shot, they're a good team. I really think it's just a matter of time before things just fall their way, and then we will see. We will talk about how great he is and how great this roster is, how great McCarthy is, and the front office and all that stuff. I think the Cowboys have been close, but I'll tell you what, they will not be if we're dealing with a quarterback that struggles, and then we end up being one of those teams. Look at those teams. It's not fun to look at it. It's really scary. I don't want to go there, and I don't know why other people would take that risk.
An update on the point total before we move subjects here. We're on pace for a record-setting night here, gentlemen. Tony, 372 points. Chris, 366. Howman in caboose with 359. Danny, you are currently on the podium, but as a silver medalist with 370 points. Howman, do you have any thoughts on being in last, on the number? We've had over 1,200 points divvied out here tonight. I mean, it's a heavy-hitting kind of night on the roundtable.
I mean, 359 is still a personal best, so I'll say that.
That was awesome. Wow. Gratitude goes a long way on the roundtable, just so everybody is aware. Okay, let's move on. Danny, I know we just came to you, but I have to start here with you. Do you feel like the Cowboys are treating Mike McCarthy unfairly? That is the prompt. Ready, set, go.
No.
Okay. What if I changed it to, do you feel bad? Are you impressed with Mike McCarthy and how he's handling what a lot of people, not yourself, believe to be a stressful situation?
Yeah, and I mean, I think he always has. To be honest, it's one of the things is about McCarthy is he's one of the coaches that can handle this job. It's not for everyone, and it takes a type of coach that's willing to work with the Joneses and still be that coach. So I have been impressed with him. I don't think he's panicking. It just reminds me a lot of 2014, because I thought everyone's talking, this is it for Garrett. They got rid of DeMarcus Ware. Miles Austin was gone. Sean Lee got hurt in the OTAs. It was like that's it.
Danny just tempting fate again. I mean, goodness gracious, with the Sean Lee story. Wow.
Well, I'm just saying it was not looking good. But then it's like, they believed in what they had, and Garrett didn't. It was unfazed, and the Cowboys they just kept going with their plan, and then they had one of their best seasons they've had in 5 years. So I listened to McCarthy recently, and I think he seems very confident in what he's saying. He's not just going through the motions, saying the words that you need to say. He believes in this team, and he actually believes in this Cowboys philosophy and the roster approach. And he believes in the players, the younger players that are, second-year players, third-year players that are going to contribute. And it made me feel more understanding of what the Cowboys are trying to do and how come they're not more splashier in free agency stuff. So to me, I feel like McCarthy's handling things very well. I really think that this is going to be one of those seasons that I'm, really impressed with him, and I might be calling for his extension, midway through the season if he's, if he keeps his team winning, and it cuts back on some of the penalties, might make a few less bonehead in-game decisions. I'll come around on the guy, but this is a really tough situation, and I just, the next guy's probably going to be worse. It's, it's really dicey when you just start bringing in new coaches and stuff. So, let's see what he can do with this. I don't think they're being unfair. This is what you got to do, and let McCarthy go out there and show what he's capable of.
Howman, Watsamata says, one wonders whether the Joneses gave him an understanding that, hey, we're rebuilding, and how you manage that determines whether we keep you. Reduced expectations for the team record. Casey adds, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking Mike should have been let go after the Packers game. He's clearly being left in place to be the fall guy if we have another pre-round 2 playoff exit. You are the author of the weekly McCarthy Chronicles, Howman. Do you feel like he is being treated improperly? Let's term it that way, by the Cowboys front office so far this offseason.
I think yes and no. On one hand, I would say no, on the sense that it's just not common for coaches to be asked to coach into the final year of their contract. So in terms of, the politics of what you should do for coaches, coaches, players, whatever, like it's very rare for high profile coaches and players to actually go into that final year of their contract if the team is actually behind you. That's one of the reasons we're talking about the Dak Prescott contract situation and how they feel about him. That's, the same with Mike McCarthy, is the fact that they didn't give him an extension seems to give the impression of, well, we're not, we're going to keep you for 2024, but like, beyond that, we don't know. We don't want to commit beyond that. So it's not really what any other team does, but it's what the Cowboys do. And of course they always do things differently. As far as, treating him properly, I mean, this offseason has really not been fundamentally different from how they've operated in the past. Like they never spend big in free agency. They're never active in the first wave of free agency. They love to, just re-sign the guys that they really feel passionate about re-signing. And, as we talked about earlier, aside from, Tyron Smith, they haven't lost any All-Pros. And even with Tyron Smith, it was kind of, there were some very obvious reasons why they moved on, just from an age standpoint, from a dependability standpoint. I think, really the only reason that this feels different is just because there's still so much anger over how the season ended in the playoffs with the Packers that, we're just all still mad about it. And then the fact that nothing has changed with how they approach the offseason has made us that more upset about it. But, to what Danny was saying about Mike McCarthy's comments, like, I don't think he's really feeling that much pressure. I feel, he came to Dallas with a very clear goal to win a Super Bowl in Dallas. And he's probably of the mindset, knowing him, how he carries himself, his, Pittsburgh mentality, like, he's probably of the mindset of, if I get to the end of my 5-year contract and I haven't done that and I've only got, one playoff win to show for it, yeah, they're absolutely in their right to not bring me back. And he's definitely the kind who loves that challenge. And he brought in a defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer, who also loves that challenge of, like, if I can't get this defense turned around with the talent that we have, then I probably shouldn't be brought back. And so I like that leadership. I like that approach and that mentality. I think that'll serve them well. I would just question how much it actually carries over to the rest of the team come playoff time, when it's actually time to, step up and rise to the occasion and get that monkey off their back of being the team to actually, break that Cowboys curse, get to the conference championship game, get to the Super Bowl. But I think McCarthy is one of the few coaches that could handle this situation properly. And I'm really happy to hear Danny saying nice things about Mike McCarthy. We've sparred plenty of times on him over the past. And I just feel like this offseason has really brought the two of us together in such unexpected ways. We're just seeing eye to eye on everything. So that's really made this offseason rewarding for me personally.
I'm really happy for you guys, truly, that we could all go through this so that the two of you could feel some level of harmony together. Tony, Mark says, what is Big Mike supposed to say when he knows the front office doesn't have his back on putting a team together that's put together to win? LOL, get ready for the Dave Campo days. That is fair, Tony, to say, like, what else is he supposed to say? Like, he's not going to come out and publicly challenge them.
Yeah, that's kind of been my whole point, because I agree with Danny, right? I believe the confidence is the confidence that he has in himself. And Howman said the same thing. Like, he's a Pittsburgh guy, he's a tough guy. He has faith in himself. But I think most of us here have been in a corporate setting where, like, you're just gonna front the company line. Yeah, like, we're all doing great. Like, I believe in the roster, I believe in my team, I believe in blah blah blah. And you're gonna say all these things, but, like, what else is he supposed to say? Like you mentioned, like, I couldn't expect him to go on the Adam Schefter and interview and be like, I don't know, man, like, Jerry's kind of hurting us here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. So, like, that's why the Ian Rappaport tweet, the Mike McCarthy thing, like, they take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, yes, do I think a guy who's made it to the pinnacle of his profession is confident in his abilities? I think that is a given, right? Like, all these guys are like alpha male at one point in time to get to this point. So yeah, I think Mike McCarthy's confident, but I if you had an honest moment with the guy, I'm sure he'd be like, well, I'd probably prefer keeping my all pro left tackle for $6.5 million. Like, there are just some moves here that just don't add up for a team that's like all in. And so, yeah, That's how I feel about it.
Chris, you hate Dak. So do you hate Mike as well?
I honestly don't think that the Cowboys are treating Mike McCarthy unfairly. I think Mike McCarthy treated the Cowboys unfairly with his poor play calling in the wild card game and his just his inconsistent, time management and play calls. If anyone's being treated unfairly, it's actually Mike Zimmer, because he's coming into a situation. He's coming into a situation where the Cowboys are losing defensive players, and the Cowboys weren't even willing to match a 1-year contract.
He's the only coach who got a guy, and he got his guy. What do you mean? Everyone has an empty bowl. He's the only person in the cafeteria who got food. He's the only one.
I know, because it was nothing. They haven't made any serious attempt to actually bring in defensive talent and bring in high-end defensive players. They're giving him the cheapest option possible, which is Eric Kendricks, and that's why they haven't been able to sign anyone else, because they're just settling. And no, I don't think Mike McCarthy is being treated unfairly. I think he's being treated extremely fairly for still having a job on the Cowboys after what he did last season in the wild card round. I think that they should have moved on at the time, and they let a lot of good coaching candidates just go to other teams. I think that Mike McCarthy, I think that he should be out after this season, and I think he will be when the Cowboys struggle.
But the roster's sick.
It was good. It's not right now. It was last year, and they failed to take advantage of it.
It was so good they got beat by Jordan Love and the Packers.
I know, and Dak threw 2 interceptions. But even though I will say that
he give up
the first interception should have been
points?
pass interference. The first interception should have been pass interference.
Was Dak playing linebacker and defensive tackle?
He wasn't, but when the defense stepped up, he wasn't. But when the defense stepped up the previous year against the 49ers, Dak Prescott couldn't do anything offensively. So
2 years.
I just want to be and stay on the record that the Mike Zimmer thing is going to age poorly. Like we're in March. We're, I don't know, 7 months away from Twitter being like, they just hired their friend. I mean, like that is the one thing that I think is not catching enough heat this offseason. They were seriously connected to who? Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, and Mike Zimmer. That's it. Like Mike Zimmer is the Eric Kendricks of coaching, options at defensive coordinator. Tony, you raised your hand.
Yeah, to Chris's point, he's like, Mike McCarthy still being here robbed us of all these coaching hires. It would have been Mike Zimmer anyway. You know what I mean? Like they weren't going to do anything creative anyway. So
you're right. I'm giving the front office the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, like
I shouldn't. You're right. I shouldn't.
Everyone but Dak gets the benefit of the doubt.
Oh,
but it's just a different responsibility when you're the quarterback, and that's what comes with the position.
Okay, an update before we enter the essay portion of the night. Short essays here tonight. Tony sitting on 583 points, as is Chris Howman in the lead at 590. Danny Phantom, you have 580. I'm not going to tell you all how many points this essay is worth. Just know that we're doing something historical here. All right, your essay prompt. Just tell us one thought you have about the Dallas Cowboys. Danny Phantom, the floor is yours.
One thought that I have?
Could be anything you want. One thought. Could be positive, negative, cheerful, depressing. You could be about the stadium and how excited you are. They got the Tyson-Jake Paul fight. I mean, it's up to you.
I really feel like I already expected this season to be a little bit more difficult than last year. I feel like McCarthy's had a lot of good talent the last couple of years or so, and there's some good opportunities. And I totally agree with Chris and some of those things. We were good enough to win in those seasons, and we just didn't perform. It's gonna be harder. I expect that already, but I also don't think it's gonna be like the sky is falling like everybody has been over the last few weeks, month or so, and it's just like it's just so terrible. And to me, that's just seems silly to me. I think the Cowboys will be a good team. I think they'll be a playoff team. I don't know how good they'll be, but I think there's still a lot of time between now and when they start playing football for us to learn some things, get some new players, find out about the progress of certain guys. So, I think that by the time September rolls around, we're going to be more excited about it, and we'll probably, people are going to be saying things that will just be completely 180s from what's being said right now. And I hope people remember that, because it's just tiresome to do this all over again. And then have to listen to the same people talking about how great this team is. And we're in it. We're one of those teams. So that part really annoys me. And I just want to say that I'm just still kind of even killed. Nothing's really high or low for me right now. And I just feel like that's the temperature of this Cowboys season.
Mr. Rachel Catalina.
I mean, for me, I think it's just constant frustration. It's constant confusion. It's constant just because to Danny's point, he's right. Fans, myself included, people are going to get more positive as the season goes on. I think that's just a natural progression. We haven't seen football for 7 months. People are going to be excited for it, even if we're a worse football team, which we all concede at this current point. We're a worse football team, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, what is the end game? Is it to see young guys step up? Is it to see what we have? Is it to put everybody that's meaningful to this team in a lame duck situation? Or is it to win Super Bowls? Right? Like, why is the end game anything but that? I understand there's money and I understand this cap and this structure and this roster building and all that. But like, if you come into this season or any season and you're Jerry Jones, Will McClay, Stephen Jones, whoever, and the first bullet point on your board isn't what do we got to do to win the Super Bowl, I think you're attacking it and approaching it wrong. I mean, we're talking about half the fan base, more than half the fan bases. Let's move on for Dak Prescott. When you can say, hey, what can we do to maximize this guy? And knowing that if it wasn't enough, we did everything we could for this kid. You know what I mean? And then you go on and you struggle with the Penixes and the other guys. So it's like there is going to be, trust me, if you want to struggle at QB, that's going to always be there. There's teams that struggle yearly finding their quarterback. You have a guy who is damn good. Is he Pat Mahomes? No, he's not. Right? He's obviously not. Right. I mean, it's an absurd standard that comes with the Cowboys quarterback, the Yankees shortstop. You know what I mean? The point guard for Duke basketball. Like, there's just, I don't think people realize sometimes the absurdity of the conversation, the absurdity of the expectation of what this guy is. Like, before the Cowboys got a first down, they're down 20-0. And then they're like, come on, Dak Prescott. Like, it's disingenuous. It's elementary sometimes. But it comes with the position. I think that's why we have a quarterback who's very quiet on social media, picks his spots. I think he understands what encompasses it. So I sit here and say, ultimately, like, yeah, people are going to be negative. But I think when it does the season does come, the positivity is going to come back. Is it going to be warranted? Do they deserve it? I don't know. I mean, at this point in time, I think the pessimism is valid, and you hope to be wrong. Like I've said that 100 times on this show. I would love to be pessimistic and turn out to be wrong, and it's the year they hoist the Lombardi Trophy. But I don't know if anybody's actually thinking that this year.
I do want to quickly just touch on a comment from Andrew, because this is one of the silliest things that people say on average in my mind. Andrew said, -5, Tony. You want us to maximize a guy who wants to maximize his money. First of all, my personal opinion is all quarterbacks, all players, all people should get all the bread that they possibly can. I hope the 4 people here with me in the roundtable, I hope everybody watching, I hope everybody listening, I hope you are paid in as much as you possibly can be in whatever your line of work is. And the idea that Dak is this criminal because he wants to be compensated highly is so ridiculous. So Danny, could you just read me the names right here? Just the names from top to bottom for the visual audience.
The highest paid quarterbacks you're looking at.
Yeah, just read the names, please.
Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Matt Stafford. All
right, now there's a name on this list that obviously the morality of is highly in question. So him aside, wow, what a bunch of just evil people, Danny. I mean, can you believe the vileness from these people who wanted to maximize their money? What a bunch of horrible people that these teams the Cincinnati Bengals should be through with Joe Burrow. They should throw him away. I mean, how dare Joe Burrow want to maximize his money, Danny Phantom? The nerve of Joe Burrow. Joseph Burrow.
Just greed, to tell you, RJ, just greed.
Howman, your one thought, please.
Well, I've composed my one thought into a 3-pronged thesis statement since this is the essay portion. So I really don't know what's going to happen this season with the Cowboys as far as how good they're going to be, what's going to end up happening. We all seem to be in agreement that this is going to be a tougher year for Mike McCarthy than last year was. But we were all saying the same thing in 2022 as well. They traded Amari Cooper. Nobody liked the Tyler Smith draft pick. There was just a general sense of not much optimism. And then of course Dak Prescott gets hurt in week 1. They get, pretty beaten up by the Buccaneers, and they still won 12 games and they won a playoff game. And like they had a good year, and they won as many games as they did the next year. And so Mike McCarthy has proven that he's able to put together a winning product. So I have reason to believe, based on the last few years that he has in Dallas, that things are still going to be good, even if it's not being set up for him to have the best roster. I think things will still be good. I don't know what's going to happen beyond that, with Dak Prescott, with Mike McCarthy, but I also think just in general, not really much is going to change fundamentally. Even if they have a change of quarterback, even if they have a change of head coach, this is still Jerry Jones. This is still Stephen Jones. They're still going to be running the show. And the way that they approach things with this team is how they're going to approach things. They're not going to be taking risks in free agency. They're going to build through the draft because they're really, really good at drafting players. They're going to handle negotiations the way that they handle them. And to a degree, that's for the good, because they've had some very, very good seasons since they've taken this approach. They've won a lot of games. And I think when you're talking about playoff success, unless you have Patrick Mahomes, it's just kind of a crapshoot. Like, the Packers got hot at the right time. They beat the Cowboys. They gave the 49ers a really good fight, right? But you can look at all these other teams, unless you're Tom Brady and the Patriots or the Buccaneers, but unless you're Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, like, you're not going to have much success in the playoffs because it's a win or go home scenario. So I really have a hard time judging any one person, player or coach, just off of playoff success. And I think it's ultimately, for the Cowboys, it's a cultural issue that permeates through the whole organization. And Jory Epstein, who everybody in Cowboys world knows, she was on the Yahoo Sports podcast with Matt Harmon earlier today, and was talking about how she had asked somebody in the Cowboys front office, would Bill Belichick actually be a fit here if they move on from Mike McCarthy, because obviously that's the very first name that's going to come up if there's an opening. And this anonymous front office person said, if Bill Belichick came into this building, looked around at just the infrastructure of everything, saw the fan spectator site overlooking practice and everything, and the one-way mirrors that they have in the locker room and stuff, he would say, I can't work with this, I can't do this, and walk right out. And that's kind of what anybody who comes into Dallas is dealing with, is the mirage of America's team. And you're facing an uphill battle the moment you get in here. So I don't think that it's as easy as saying, oh, well, Dak Prescott can't get it done, we got to get rid of him. Oh, Mike McCarthy can't get it done, we got to get rid of him. It's going to take a whole lot more just structurally to get this thing turned around, to be truly at a Super Bowl level, and a little bit of luck. And I think that's something worth keeping in mind as we go into the rest of this offseason and go into whatever the 2024 regular season has for us.
The goalposts always move, to your kind of overall point, Howman. Rick Ursulini says Dak has been to 7 playoffs and Herbert's been to 1? This was in defense of Herbert and against Dak, obviously based on the list that we read. So now it's not a problem that Herbert has only been to 1 playoff, or has 1 playoff appearance in 4 seasons. Not an issue and that they, by the way, blew a historic lead in the process of the lone playoff appearance. But whatever. Chris, close us out with your one final thought.
All right. I think that the way that the Cowboys have treated free agency, they're setting themselves up to have a 2022 level draft class to really be competitive this year and get players like a Tyler Smith, a Deron Bland, a Jake Ferguson, a Damone Clark, get those players who can come in immediately and have an impact. And I just think that that's not an efficient way to run, or I just don't think that's an efficient way to build your roster for a team that's actually trying to compete. And it's just frustrating. I think that the Cowboys are going to be, really struggling to compete with the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's just something that I think it's going to be an uphill battle for them next season. And, I'll be happy if they can make the playoffs, but I think that a lot of changes are going to come after this upcoming season.
Okay. By the way, just to kind of end my point, Andrew says Herbert and Dak the same age. At Herbert's NFL age, Dak had been to the playoffs 3 times, just so we're all aware. And he had, only twice. He'd been the number 1 seed once. So he'd been to the divisional round twice, but real big loser compared to Justin Herbert, obviously. All right, all the points have been tabulated. You all made me work tonight. I do want to say, I know we argued, I know we bickered, but we're one big happy family, and that's ultimately what matters the most. So that being said, it was a historic night. I mean, an absolutely incredible night. Almost 50,000 points handed out over the course of tonight's roundtable. The final scores you're looking at right now: Tony, 12,743; Chris, 11,999; Howman, 13,001; Danny, 12,381, which means our round table winner tonight with a round table record 13,001 points. David Howman, congratulations to you, sir. Wow. Well done. My goodness. How do you feel? This is a historic night.
Well, I think, if I had $1 for every point I scored, I might still be able to outspend the Cowboys in free agency. That's all I got.
Wow. Chris, do you have anything to say? You felt just shy of the 12K club.
Well, I have two things. One, One, what could I have done to get that last point? And two, I think that the fan vote was a little left out in this one because I saw a lot of pluses my way throughout this stream. I think the fan base really, really appreciated my effort. So
do you think that you had more than 12,000 fan points?
I think so. Yeah, I really do because I was seeing a lot of pluses for my name in the chat, and I will appreciate the fan vote. But
to answer your question,
shout out to David as my Writer's Block co-hosts.
To answer your question, what you could have done to get the other point is you could have told us what you had for dinner. I'm always curious.
I had beef flavored ramen.
Takeaway points.
You know what, Chris? Because you were honest, you are now officially in the 12K club. So
I'm saving money right now. I'm waiting on my next paycheck.
Danny, 12,381, bronze medalist. You made the podium. That's an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of points. I've never been smoked by this many points before, so I'm a little bit disappointed. But you know what? I just didn't think I had enough prongs in my thesis.
That's right.
Hats off to Howman. He earned it tonight. So,
Tony, always the bridesmaid. Really is kind of how you are around here. But you're a bridesmaid with 12,743 points. That's got to be worth something in your book.
To Chris, he wants me out. If I was Dak Prescott, he'd want me out right now.
Wow. Okay. Well, once again, congratulations to Howman, and congratulations to all of us, mostly because we have survived the Dallas Cowboys offseason to this point in time. Whether we will, the rest of things, obviously remains to be seen. Tony, as we leave, why don't you tell us what you had for dinner and what you'll have for breakfast tomorrow?
Wow. For dinner, I had a ribeye steak, Caesar salad, and mashed potatoes.
Man, I wish I would have had that instead of the ramen.
Yeah. And then for breakfast, I actually don't really eat breakfast too often. I'll probably eat
your first meal of the day tomorrow. How about that? What's it going to be?
Honestly, probably a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
It's a good choice.
maybe a bag of chips. Yeah, I don't know. Get crazy.
What kind of jelly though? That's important.
Raspberry preserves.
That's the best flavor. Good job.
Yep.
That's plus 10 points right there.
Me and Chris were back, baby. We're back.
Yeah. We're back.
Are you a crunchy or smooth guy, Tony?
Smooth all the way.
Yep, creamy, dude. Okay.
You guys 5 years old.
If me and Tony agree on anything, it's food. We got good taste.
Have you guys ever seen like goober? You know what goober is?
Yeah. It's like the half and half, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You get the goober, it's just one,
very easy.
Butter knife, and you just let it go.
So true fact, I eat peanut butter and jelly. I mix it together. It's one thing. I mix it all. I don't eat it separate.
You'll love goober then.
What do you mean you mix it?
You're
mixing it in the sandwich. What do you mean you mix it?
No, I mix it before I even put it
like
on
in
the
a bowl?
Yeah, in a bowl. That's how I eat it. If you
what the hell, Danny? That's weird.
Try it, and then
you're saying so you scoop some peanut butter in a bowl, and then you scoop some jelly in a bowl, and then you mix them, and then so that's what you're slathering on your.
It's like
bread.
A little purple. Yep, that's what. Yeah, try it.
It feels unnecessary. You could.
You know what? It's delicious. It's delicious.
Do you think that there's like a chemical process happening within the mixture that you're not getting if you just
put them? It's all about proportions. If you get the right proportion, then you're. It's you know what? If you try it and say this was disgusting, then I'll listen to you. But if you don't try it, then I don't even want to hear it. But
All right.
because once you try it, you can't go back.
Danny, the problem is like the best part about PB&J is you dirty so few dishes. You generally just dirty like one, maybe two knives for one for each thing. You're making a mess over here, dude. Like, I mean,
I'm reminded often from my wife about the extra bowl I use to do this, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to make a little sacrifice to really enjoy your sandwich.
Howman, can you please?
I want everyone to try it and then tell me next week.
Nobody do that.
Everyone do it.
Also, you said purple, so you're a grape jelly fan, I presume?
Yeah, but I mean, I'll do strawberry too, but I do purple. I do grape mostly. Okay,
so creamy or crunchy while we're here?
I actually like it creamy.
Jeez, guys. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I love that you keep calling it purple instead of grape. Like, I'll do purple.
Okay, can you, Howman, please outline your PB&J, and then we really go. Whether it's creamy or crunchy, what type of jelly, and while we're at it, what type of bread, wheat, white, whatever you use, we need to know.
Oh wait, we're doing bread?
No, it's wheat bread because you got to be a little healthy. It's creamy peanut butter, and then I like to switch out the type of jelly I get. I like some variety, but right now I'm doing blackberry preserves.
Wow.
Wow.
We are an eclectic group.